In fact, you know what a resentment is? A resentment is, I'm just talking about etymology here. The word resentment is a re-sentiment. Sentiment means feelings from a Latin root, sentir. So resentment is a, by the way, I sent my wife a text and she didn't get it. And I said, so she didn't answer. I said, did you answer me? You didn't answer me? Did you get my text? Or you didn't? She says, I didn't get it. So I texted her back. I resent it. It spells, I resent it. Okay. Then I had to call her. Enough texting. I said, no, I don't resent it either. I resent it. Okay. What's a re-sentiment? It's not happening now, but you're feeling it now. Do you think about how powerful our brains are? That, you know, we have that survival fight or flight mechanism to keep us safe. So the bear jumps out of the woods and starts chasing us, and the adrenal glands start pumping adrenaline, and we have that fight or flight response, and that keeps us safe. That saves our lives. But you're driving in the car, you're on the freeway, and you're in a traffic jam, and your mind is wandering, that sort of stream of consciousness, you know, not thinking about particular or anything, and all of a sudden you start remembering about some old wound from 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, right? And all of a sudden, in your mind it's happening, and your palms are sweating, your stomach is tight, and your throat is tight, and your blood pressure is up, and you're having an actual physical response. I mean, is there anybody you could think of in your personal life, if you would just think about this person, you could get your blood boiling in 10 seconds? Don't say who it is, especially if they're also in this room. Maybe they would name you. You don't know, okay? But I'm saying, like, it's not happening now, but you're feeling it now. If the bear is jumping out of the woods at me and I get the, you know, the physiological response, my heart is beating and I'm sweating, okay, I understand that response. It's going to save me. But I'm sitting in the car, I'm in Palm Beach in 2014, and I'm remembering something that happened in Great Neck in 1992. I don't know if we were in Great Neck in 1992, but I don't know. On the north side? It's like, okay. So anyways, that's called a cold read, by the way. I'll play about that. Okay, so it's not happening now, but you're feeling it now. You're getting a physiological reaction to stimulus that really doesn't exist anymore. It's in the past, and not even the real past, your imagined recollection of the past. But that's how powerful our brains are. Worrying is the same thing, by the way. Worrying is, my brain is so powerful that I can get a physiological response out of my body fretting about an imagined future, something that didn't happen, may never happen. That's worry. Resentment is when I do it about a memory of the past. And the amazing thing is, because it's no longer about the event itself, it's about my meditating on it. Yes, I said meditating. If you know how to worry, you know how to meditate. If you know how to have a resentment, you know how to meditate. That's meditation, my friends. That's using your big, powerful brain machine to create emotions that are not based on stimulus from the phenomenological universe. Okay? You can't touch, taste, smell. It's not happening in front of you. It's happening in your head, and your heart is beating from it. That's a powerful meditation. So if I know how to have a resentment, I know how to meditate. And there's nowhere to go to keep myself safe. If the bear is chasing me, I can run from the bear. But it's my own head. It's in my head. My head is doing it to me. Where do I go? Where am I safe? So, you know, we say things like, harboring a grudge is like drinking poison and waiting for the other guy to drop dead. Or like Dear Abby. Remember Dear Abby? And her sister, Ann Landers, both nice Jewish girls from Iowa, and they were from, I think, Sioux Falls, Iowa. And yeah, is that correct? And they, Ann Landers said, no, Dear Abby said, a resentment is giving rent-free space in your brain to someone you don't even like. But it's more than that. When I have the resentment, I'm not showing up for my own life. Zusha, why weren't you Zusha? The resentment is putting me in my head. I'm not here, I'm not available, I'm not with you guys, I'm in my head. I'm in resentment land. You know? I mean, how many of us did it? I'm trying to be reasonably interesting up here, but you know, I'm sure even some people are marginally interested in what I'm saying, at least at some point while I'm talking, because I know I'm talking about stuff that does touch a nerve. At some point, maybe your mind did start to wander about some old hurts, and you started thinking about it. You left the room. We didn't see you leave the room, but you did. How many times we do that? We're at a family dinner, we're playing with our kids, or we're at the museum. We're not even there because, you know, we're being hurt again. But there's nowhere to go to be safe because we're hurting ourselves in our own head. It's not the pain anymore, it's the suffering. It's not the moment of pain or even the moments of pain. It's the lifetime of self-induced suffering. And we're not showing up for our own lives. We're not present, we're not there. So I understand, you know, resentment is just counterproductive, you know, on a very simple psychological level, but I'm saying on a spiritual level, the resentment takes me out of my own life, and I'm not me, that I'm not there, I'm not reporting for duty to live my own life. So this is what I'm saying at Gilda's Club, and as I say this, and I talk about this movie, this story, this narrative, and I'm the protagonist of my story, and God is telling me a story, and I have to look at every detail on the screen, and whether it's painful or whether it's pleasurable, and it's all for me, and I have to pay attention, and I have to be involved and be engaged. And this lady stands up, and I gotta tell you, I've been aware of this woman in some weird sort of way, tangentially, like in my peripheral vision the entire time I was talking, and she stood up quickly. And when she stood up quickly, I immediately turned to look at her. She was extremely frail, physically very frail, and she stood up very quickly. So my first reaction was concern. This woman looks too weak to be standing up that fast. And I understood, being where I was at Gilda's Club, I understood why she was emaciated and weak and frail. And it was incongruous to me the way she stood up so quickly. So I turn, I look, and then I hear, "Rabbi!" And I look, it's her, she's talking, her voice is booming. And this is now very strange to me, because the voice doesn't match the body, right? And I said, yeah. And I'm thinking, here it comes, this is it, this is it, this is stupid, you're wrong. And I'm gonna say, you're right, I apologize, I'm done. By the way, I made it up, so don't cast any aspersions on the Torah, okay? And she says, I have to say something. I said, please do. Again, I told you I did not make that deal with you guys, okay? She says, I have to say something. Please do. She says, my friends will think I'm crazy when I tell them I don't wish that I never got sick. When we argue in circles, and they say, what, you're giving up? And I say, God forbid, I plan to live many healthy, happy, long years. Oh, so you don't want it? No, I want to get rid of it. Well, that means not wanting it. No, I'm fine with having had it. Talking about a second from now, not a second ago. And they either think I'm a breakup, you know, I'm mincing words, it's a semantic game, or they think I kind of lost it, and it's very frustrating to not be understood. No, I don't wish that I never got it. And now I know how to explain it to them. Now I know what to tell them. It's very simple. She says, I don't wish that I never got it for one reason only. Because I did. Therefore, to now at this point not have had it, since I did get it, so now at this point to wish to have not ever had it would actually be to wish for another life, a different story. Not my story, some other story, which is an easier story, much more pleasant story, but not my story, some other story. She says, I don't want some other story. I don't want some other life. I want to live my life, my story, the story that God is telling me. That was an amazing moment for me. I've never forgotten it. I want to live my life, my story, the story that God is telling me. Now you can say, that's beautiful, but what does that have to do with forgiveness? Because I understand very well there's a difference between I come outside and there was a hurricane. That's called local color, by the way. You try to do like references that apply to regional life. And the hurricane knocked down a palm branch. Okay? And it smashed your car. And even the insurance company will say, well, that's an act of God. So, you know what? The director of my story decided that today, my first scene of today's movie is I come outside and I find my car's been smashed up by a falling palm tree. They got whipped down by a hurricane wind. Okay, fine, no problem. I'm okay with that. But what if I come outside and my car's been smashed up because my teenager, who I told not to take the car, went and did it anyway and got into an accident? That's a lot different story. What if I come outside and my neighbor doesn't like that I parked too close to his parking space and he's taking a hammer and smashing up my car? In other words, what I'm saying is, when it's all, you know, like no other people involved, it's much easier to say, this is my story, the story that God is telling me. What about when other people are there with their free will, making choices? Much harder, okay? I know, and I understand that, I know that, okay? I'm not pretending it's not an issue. But this is what I want to talk about. What about when my story goes through a rough few chapters, a really tough period of time, and the antagonist isn't some, you know, the antagonist is a disease, okay? Or the antagonist is some sort of a challenge that needs to be overcome. But here, the antagonist, it's this guy who keeps making these really bad choices against me. How do I draw on faith to get through that? So I want to tell you a story about a Jewish family that lived in Israel. It was a big family. It was one of the boys, one of the younger boys, the second youngest. His brothers didn't like it. They got mad at him. They threw him in a pit and sold him into slavery. Do you know this family? Yeah, there's an Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. But originally it was based on a book. And actually I believe that Saturday mornings they read from this book communally in this very building. It's called the Bible, or the Chumash. And in the end of the first book of the 5 books, the book of Genesis, it talks about this story when after, you see, Joseph and his brothers, their father was Jacob, and he passes away, Jacob passes away. And then the brothers who sold Joseph into slavery come to him and they say, don't take vengeance on us. Now it's years after they've already been reunited, but they figured, you know, as long as father was still alive, he wasn't going to do anything to us. But now that father has passed away, right after the funeral, now he's going to do it to us, you know. So they come to him and they say, you know, Dad wouldn't like it if you rubbed us out, you know, be merciful, don't do it to us. And Joseph responds to them an amazing, well, he says 2 things really. It's 1 verse, but it's 2 things. He says to them 2 things. He says, am I instead of God? You meant it for bad, but it turned out good. Okay, 2 things. Am I instead of God? You meant it for bad, but it turned out good. What does that mean? It's a very deep answer. Basically, they're coming to him with what premise? They remember when he was 17 years old, they got mad at him, they sold him into slavery, all this weird stuff happened to him. They ruined his life. I mean, if he wanted to pinpoint the moment when everything changed, think about it, this boy, Joseph, for the first 17 years of his life, he was a shepherd boy. He lived with his father and his brothers. They had this peaceful, idyllic life out there with the herds, with the flocks. And they lived this country life specifically so they could just be immersed in deep thoughts and meditating on the oneness of God. And here was this boy Joseph, and he was like the apple of his father's eye. They would study Torah together there in the fields when they would graze the sheep. And this beautiful life he had. And then one day, it was all ripped away from him. And they threw him in a pit first. They were going to kill him. Then they sold him into slavery. And he ends up in Egypt. And then his master's wife casts her eyes upon him. And then she turns on him. And he ends up in prison. He's sitting in a dungeon. And then he comes out of the dungeon because he interprets dreams. And then he interprets the dreams. He becomes the viceroy. And now he's the head of agriculture. He's gathering all the grain in Egypt during a time of world famine. And that itself is this crazy test of being around this lewdness and this. And at the end of it all, basically, his family ends up having to come to him because they need food. The whole world needs food. He sustains them. He sustains the whole world. He's the hero. And it's such a wild story. And they're coming to him and basically saying, look, we ruined your life. But forgive us. And Joseph's response is so healthy. He says, oh, yeah, that, yeah. That thing you did to me, yeah. You're coming to apologize for ruining my life. Don't flatter yourselves. You don't have that power. Nobody has that power. No, I understand the premise where you're coming from. I understand. When I was 17 years old, I wasn't exactly voted most likely in the senior class to be thrown in a pit and sold into slavery. I understand. I understand the whole thing was this wild turn, this unexpected twist. I get it. But you see, my life has an author. You're not the authors. No one's the author. God is the author. And nothing happened in my life, not a detail. There wasn't a superfluous shot. Nothing happened in my life for a second that wasn't exactly the story that God wanted to tell me all along. You were just vehicles. You're just players on a stage. You realize that we idolize those who we resent? I mean it literally. I mean in the term of actual idolatry. I don't mean we admire them. Sometimes we do, and that's terrible when someone we look up to exploits that power discrepancy and takes advantage of it and hurts us. But so sometimes we do admire our abusers or our victimizers. But I'm saying just by definition, anyone you have a resentment against, anyone at all that you have a resentment against. The garbage man, he doesn't pick up our bags. He picked up the neighbor's bag. Any tiny little resentment, all the way from that, all the way down to, the person who you really believe ruined your life. That from that moment, from that time, that relationship, that encounter, that's when everything was changed and nothing was ever the same again. And now everything that happens to me, where I live, who I marry, my career, it all was colored, it was all tinged, if not tainted, by that run-in with that guy or gal. And you are idolizing that person. Because idolatry is the false attribution of godlike powers to anything other than God. There's only one author of my story. And when I begin to believe that another created being ripped away the pen from the author for a moment and started writing in their own stuff, I idolize that person. I falsely attribute godlike powers to someone other than God. So Joseph had it right. He was so healthy. He said, you're coming to me and say, you're sorry for ruining my life. You didn't help me. You didn't hurt me. My life turned out exactly the way God always had it planned. It's a wonderful story. I'm so glad that I didn't stew in self-pity and resentment and look away from my life. I'm so glad that I didn't think of myself as a victim and be stuck in my own head, that I was able to keep my eyes open and be present and be in the moment and watch my crazy life unfold, because it's been a crazy ride. Yeah, it has. We never expected it to be this way. But it's my life, the story that God is telling me. You didn't cause it to happen, God did. So that's what he tells them. You meant it for bad, it turned out good, it turned out exactly the way it's supposed to turn out. But he also mentions that you meant it for bad. In other words, your accountability is still there. And they're both true at the same time. Do you understand that? When you forgive someone for hurting you, you're not taking away their accountability. You're relieving yourself of the toxicity. You're getting rid of your burden. Their accountability is still there. You just don't have to be their parole officer. Isn't that a wonderful feeling when you realize you don't have to be your victimizer's parole officer? You don't have to watch and wait and see and make sure they get their comeuppance. What a relief. You have so much free time to get a life. This is what he told them. You meant it for bad. That's right. Your intent was bad. But that was your intent, and you're accountable for your intent. But the story is still the story. You didn't assume God-like control over my life at that moment. God was always in control of my life at every moment. So it all is exactly the way that it was supposed to be. Don't worry about it. Oh, now, I understand you feel rotten for having made a choice that was intended to ruin someone's life. I understand that your intent was rotten. That's true. That's true. But leave me out of it. That's what he says. Am I instead of God? That's the other part of the statement. This is not Catholicism, and I'm not the priest. This is not the confessional. If you feel bad about bad choices you made toward me, against me, involving me, it sounds like to me that you really need to do teshuvah. You need to repent. You need to return to God. So go to God. I'm not the intermediary. I'm not here to hear your confession. Go talk to God. See, isn't that also a beautiful moment? I talked about before a minute ago that, you know, the recognition that you don't have to be your abuser's parole officer. You don't have to wait and watch and make sure they get their comeuppance. But this is an even greater epiphany when you realize you don't have to be your abuser's therapist. Right? You know, when the person comes to you and is all remorseful and they want to talk about it, which is even more degrading than the first time, because the first time, you know, it's over much quicker. Now you have to sit there and listen and pretend to be compassionate. It's just so degrading, and it's so futile. It never leads to anything good. So Joseph was so healthy. He tells them, sounds like you feel really bad about choices you made that involved me. I understand that. Work it out with God. And I pray for you. And I really pray for you that you do work it all out. As far as for me, I've been over this for a long time. I've been over it. You got to work it out still? Okay, I get that. Go work it out. So one, you meant it for bad, but it turned out good. You didn't ruin my life. You didn't assume God-like control over my life for 1 second. My life is exactly what God has meant it for me. It's my story. The story God's telling me. Don't flatter yourself. That's one point. Second of all, you feel rotten about your intent. Well, yeah, it was a rotten intent. Okay, work it out with God. You don't have to come to me. So healthy. You know, I was talking to a group and I was saying how anger is idolatry. I mean, that's not my concept. It says in the books, Kol hakoyes ki'ilu eved avodah zarah. Anyone who gets angry, it's like you worship idols. Is that like a hyperbolic statement? The sages are just being like an hysterical parent who says, you know, oh, that toy is dangerous. You poke out your eye. Anger is bad. How bad? Like idolatry bad. Just trying to pick the biggest sin in the book to compare it to? Or do they really mean that anger is idolatrous? Anger is idolatrous because anger is a reality rejection. My father is a psychologist. I rebelled and became a rabbi. It's not a joke, it's actually true. If you want to analyze it, it'd be polite to do so after I went through it. But I remember one time I was about 15 years old, sitting at the kitchen table, my father says to me, son, what's the difference between psychosis and neurosis? Which, by the way, growing up in my home, I knew that was the setup for a joke. So I said, I don't know, Dad, what's the difference between psychosis and neurosis? He says to me, psychosis is when I think 2 + 2 = 5. Neurosis is, I know 2 + 2 = 4, and I can't stand it. Okay, so anger is a reality rejection. Anger is saying 2 + 2 = 4, and it ought not to be. But it is. Anger, see, fear is I don't want it to happen. Anger is, it shouldn't have happened. Well, apparently it should have. It did. It did. Why are you fighting reality? So anger is a reality rejection, and if it's a reality rejection, it's an author of reality rejection. You understand? We're rejecting the author of reality as well. We're rejecting God. So I'm crossing God's role out. I'm saying my life is random and meaningless, that I am at the whim of people. People's choices do decide my life. Make myself a victim, make myself a real thermometer, a real reactive victim type. Because I don't have faith, I can't believe that there's an author who would put me through such things. Well, apparently he did want to put you through these things. Apparently he has that much faith in you. And then out of the episode of the protagonist story has to be a high note. There can be conflict, there can be challenge, there can be loss, there can be pain. So anger is a reality rejection. Oh, God got it wrong. It wasn't supposed to be that way. It's not healthy. You cannot be present for your own life and be angry at the same time. So once a shul, they raised $500,000 over the summer so they could do an addition in the shul, and part of it was paving the parking lot. And the first day it was done, these little boys ran out of Hebrew school and they ran right through the wet cement and tracked it all up. And the rabbi who just spent the whole summer raising that money, he walked out and he saw the little boys putting footprints in the wet cement, and he started screaming at them. And just at that moment, one of the boys' fathers pulled up for carpool. He said, Rabbi, you're screaming at the boys? You told us. Anyone who gets angry, it's like he worships idols. And here you are, you're getting angry at the boys running in the cement. Rabbi says, that's true. I did teach you that. But that was in the abstract. This is in the concrete. So I was talking and I was saying, anger is a reality rejection. Anger is always unhealthy. Anything that separates you from reality is unhealthy. Right? Anything that separates you from reality is unhealthy. Maybe I shouldn't say that so axiomatically. Maybe I should just explain that for a second. I think there's two concepts that really often get misunderstood for each other. They get a bad rap, which are fantasy and faith. And mostly that happens because of the weird people who purport to be people of faith, but they're really just people of weirdness. And I saw once a bumper sticker that said, and if it was on a bumper sticker, you know it has to be true. I saw once a bumper sticker that said, doesn't God prefer spiritual fruits to religious nuts? So, there's a difference between fantasy and faith, although they are often mistaken for one another. But faith is an idea that I cling to in order to have the courage to face reality. almost identical. Right? So close, but yet so far, completely far. I'll say it again. Fantasy is an idea that I cling to in order to avoid facing reality. Faith is an idea that I cling to in order to have the courage to face reality. So if you're going through life and you're not afraid, the question is it reckless or is it courageous? Are your eyes open or are your eyes closed? If your eyes are open, it's courageous. If your eyes are closed, it's reckless. If you're in denial, it's reckless. Faith is not denial. Faith is I see the reality and I'm okay because God's got me. And if God brings me to it, He can bring me through it. Or like Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going. So a reality rejection is patently unhealthy. So I was once talking to this crowd and I said, anger is useless, it's never good. And this one lady says to me, well, Rabbi, wouldn't you say that anger is sometimes good? I said, actually, I just said that anger is never good. It's funny to me. I mean, if you go around speaking, it would be funny to you as well. You say something, people, no, anger is never good. Well, wouldn't you say it's something? No, I wouldn't say no. I just said it was never good. You know, there's a general rule. You have to answer the questioner, not the question. So I asked her, I said, well, why do you think anger is good? I understood there's something deep there. And she says, well, you know, like if somebody's taking advantage. That's all she had to say. I understood. I mean, I don't know who, I don't know where, I don't know what, but that's all they needed to hear. And so I told her, I said, sometimes we don't set boundaries that we should have set way earlier. And then things become so desperate and become so painful and so chaotic. And we just finally, say, get on, just back off! So, oh my God, that anger felt so good. That anger is a poison. Setting the boundary felt good. Why did you have to wait until you were desperate to set the boundary? You could have set the boundary calmly. And any boundary that you set out of desperation, you'll set that same boundary so much more effectively out of calmness. No raised voice, no flaring nostrils, just a boundary, just a no, I'm not available for that mistreatment. You push, you'll find out. I'm not available for that. No. Sorry, I can't. And you feel like a mensch. You are a mensch. That's self-respect. It's great. It's awesome. You value yourself as an actual child of God. So I said to her, sometimes the anger gives us clarity, but it's not even real clarity, it's clouded clarity, and it's passing clarity. We don't need the anger, we need the clarity. You know, in Torah, there's no right to self-defense. In American law, there's a right to self-defense. You know, stand your ground. Oh, I'm in Florida. Okay, I won't talk about that. So, anyways, in Torah, there's no right to self-defense. All my Second Amendment dudes are sitting there. Oh, that's how I got it. No, there's no right to self-defense. There is an obligation to self-defense. See, in American law, I can choose to exercise my right or not. In Torah, there's an obligation, like putting on tefillin every day, except for Shabbos and Yom Tov. You're not allowed to let people get killed, including yourself. And if the only way to stop that from happening is to kill someone else, you have to do it. It's not a right, it's an obligation. So imagine that. The same Torah that says, anyone who gets angry, it's like he worships idols, is the same Torah that says, if the only way you can stop someone from hurting you is to kill them, you have to do it. How do you reconcile the two? Very simple. When you gotta kill him, kill him. Just don't be angry about it. And if you can kill a guy without your heart skipping a beat, certainly you can set a simple boundary, you know, a simple thing like dinner is served at 7 o'clock. It's not served a second time or a third time whenever you get home. You know, something simple like that. And it doesn't have to be, well, what do you think I am? I'm not a waitress. I'm not running a restaurant. Who told you, first of all, to get all into your own head and start interpreting this information and start assigning a role in a script and feeling like a victim? Who told you had to get desperate? Who told you had to get angry? Who told you had to have some self-respect, set a boundary, just do it calmly. Do it calmly. A Jew's not a schmata. We're not pacifists. It's not pacifism, and it's not passive. It's proactive. Power. I make decisions for me. See, that's when I have power. When I make decisions for you is when I'm an idiot, because I don't have power to make your decisions. I make myself frustrated. You know what they say? Expectations are premeditated resentments. So I'm making decisions for you, because I know what you ought to do. I'm setting myself up to feel impotent. But if I make decisions for myself, you know, have a great day unless you got other plans, thermostat, not thermometer, that's when I feel my power. And then no matter what you do, I'm choosing my reaction. Oh, you're treating me in an unhealthy way? Okay, I get that. I mean, I hope you grow up soon, but I'm going to react in a healthy way. And if the healthiest reaction to your unhealthy behavior is I'm going to put up a boundary, or I'll even go away from you, that's what I'll do. No hard feelings. I'm just doing what a self-respecting adult does. Miracle of miracles, right? You know, life is so much more fun, real fun, without the drama. I know the drama seems like fun. It's not fun. It's distraction. Here's what I want to tell you. Comes the high holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and we stand before God, and each one of us asks for divine mercy, for rachmanos, rachamim. It's the same root, rachmanos, rachamim. It's that root, resh ches mem, and it means pity or compassion or mercy. We want God to give us pity, compassion, mercy. Call him Ovarachamim, our merciful Father. Ovarachamon, compassionate Father. And we have to have Rachamim, Rachmanut to all of those who have treated us in ways that we would have preferred they didn't treat us. What does it mean to have compassion, mercy, pity, rachamim, rachmonos? So I told you the root is resh ches mem. Any Hebrew speakers here? Any Israelis? What's a resh ches mem? A womb. A womb. W-O-M-B. A rechem is a womb. Having rachmanis, rachamim, compassion, particularly on someone who has hurt me, is creating a womb. See, if somebody mistreats me, it means a lot more about them than it means about me. It means they're unhealthy. How I react means, you know, tells you about me, but the fact that they treated me in an inappropriate way, that tells you about them. That means they have to still grow up. They're still making unhealthy choices. They need to grow up, which is okay. We all need to grow up. It's okay. We don't have to be perfect yet. Somebody once told me, don't cry that you're imperfect. It means that God still is keeping you around for a while. Like the farmers say about the apples, when they're green, you let them keep growing, and when they're red, you pick them. So The fact that you're still imperfect, you're still green, it means you're going to continue growing for a while. That's all right. So somebody hurts you, they do something unhealthy. Now, you would have wished that their unhealthiness would have been splattered in some other direction and not on you, but this time it got on you. And you size it up, you say, you know what, this person needs to grow up. My problem is my ego, okay, my edging God out, my self-consciousness as opposed to my God consciousness, has been affronted. My ego has been affronted. I'm taking it personal. Their unhealthy choice is about them, not about me, and I'm making it about me. Okay? And I'm in my resentment, resentiment, meditation. Not happening now, but I'm feeling it now. There's nowhere to run. I'm making it happen. I'm feeling my heart race. My palms are sweating. My stomach's tight. I'm torturing myself. It's no longer pain. Now it's suffering. Not what they did to me. It's my meditation on what they did to me. It's self-inflicted suffering. And I got to say, Kol Nidre, you know what? I released myself with this vow. I made a promise never to get over this. No, I am getting over this. And you know how I'm going to get over it? Rachmonis, Rechem, a womb. I got to take my ego and make a hollow space. Like a pregnant woman gives space within herself for another being to grow. When someone's hurt me, they took something that was supposed to be mine, and they did something to me that I felt wasn't supposed to happen. You know what? That's their shtick. That's their unhealthiness. That's their need to grow up a little bit. And if I'm going to smother them with my obsessive thinking, and my resentment, and my grudge, I got to take a step back. I got to make an empty space within the ego. Make a womb. Allow that person to grow. Lovingly release them to the care of God. I don't like the way their unhealthiness has manifested itself, but that's the choices they made. Them, it's not me. The choice I'm making is Rachmonis, Rachem, a womb. Make a hollow space in my ego to allow another child of God to grow. Does it mean that I have to be around? In fact, when I make that space, it could mean that there's a lot of distance. It might mean that I can't have a relationship with you right now. It might not be safe. That's okay. But it's not punishment. It's not punitive. It's not punitive. It's respectful. It's respectfully, lovingly, compassionately releasing, detaching, allowing this person to go seek their own journey, to seek their own growth, and it's between them and God. Am I instead of God? You meant it for bad, it turned out good. You never took the reins away from God. My story is my story, the story that God is telling me. I want to wish all of us a year of becoming our true selves, true to our mission, the special mission that each one of us uniquely can only do. Get out of your head, get into your life, show up for your own life. God's giving you what you need. And hopefully you'll have the eyes to see all the wonderful things that you're needed for. And you should be given the strength and the resources, material resources, good health, money, whatever it is, to be able to do your special mission in the world. Okay.
Do you have any questions for the Rabbi? Rabbi is available if anyone has any questions. Any questions from the audience?